The street was
Sir,
quiet.
can you tell
It
us
was the
what
kind of
happened here? I
silence
heard a
that
loud
only
crash
comes
when I came
before
out the door.
something
It was like
bad
this.
happens.
We'll take a look.
Street lights flickered above empty sidewalks. Most people in the neighborhood were asleep. But inside a small house at the end of the block, Marcus Hill was already awake. Marcus was a black veteran, 52 years old. He lived alone. Every morning, he woke up before sunrise. Old habits never left him. The military had trained his body to wake early, even years after retirement. He sat at his kitchen table, drinking coffee, staring at nothing. The house was simple, clean, organized. Everything had a place. Then suddenly, loud banging. The front door shook. Police! Open the door. Marcus didn't panic. His face stayed calm, but his eyes changed. He had heard that kind of knocking before. Not as a civilian. As a soldier. Another loud bang. The neighbors' lights started turning on one by one. Outside, red and blue lights filled the street. Police cars surrounded the house. Officers stood behind vehicles, weapons ready, shouting commands. Inside, Marcus slowly stood up. He did not rush. He did not argue. He simply walked toward the door with his hands visible. Years of discipline controlled every movement. But something felt wrong. Marcus had done nothing illegal. He kept to himself. He helped neighbors fix cars. Sometimes kids from the block came to him for advice. Everyone knew him as quiet, respectful, and calm. So why were there 10 police officers outside his house? The banging grew louder. Open the door now. Marcus unlocked the door and opened it slowly. Bright flashlights hit his face. Hand where we can see them. His hands were already raised. Officers rushed forward, pushing him against the wall. One officer moved inside, scanning the house. Another kept shouting commands, even though Marcus wasn't resisting. The neighbors watched from windows. Some recorded on their phones. Marcus said only one sentence. "What is this about, officer?" No one answered him. Instead, one young officer walked past him into the living room. And then everything changed. The officer froze. On the wall, hanging carefully in a glass frame, was a military jacket. Dark blue, with patches, and one name that made his face lose color instantly. The officer whispered, "Sergeant Hill." Another officer stepped inside and saw it too. The room suddenly went quiet. The aggressive shouting stopped. The tension changed. Because this was not just a jacket. It was a Navy SEAL jacket. Decorated. Recognized. Earned in places most people never survived. The officer looked back at Marcus, confused now. "You serve?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. He simply nodded once. Outside, the commanding officer stepped inside, annoyed by the sudden silence. "What's taking so long?" Then he saw the jacket. His expression changed instantly. The energy in the room shifted from control to uncertainty. Because someone had made a mistake. A big one. And everyone could feel it. Marcus finally spoke again, calm but firm. "You broke my door at 4 in the morning," he said. "So, I'll ask again, what is this about?" No one answered. Not yet. But across the street, a neighbor's camera kept recording. And this moment was about to spread far beyond this quiet neighborhood. Because Marcus Hill was not just a veteran. He was someone with a past the police did not expect. And whatever they were looking for, they were about to realize they had chosen the wrong house. The house was silent now. Only the sound of police radios filled the air. The same officers who had rushed in seconds ago were suddenly unsure of what to do next. Their voices were lower, their movements slower. Marcus Hill stood calmly near the wall, hands still visible. He noticed the change immediately. He had seen it before, the moment when people realized they misunderstood the situation. The commanding officer stepped closer. "Mr. Hill," he said carefully, "we received a report connected to this address." Marcus looked at him, waiting. "What kind of report?" The officer hesitated. That hesitation said more than words. A possible weapons complaint. Marcus raised an eyebrow slightly. Not angry, just tired. "I legally own one locked firearm," Marcus replied. "Registered. Never used outside the range." One of the younger officers looked embarrassed. He had already checked the house. Everything was clean, organized, nothing illegal, nothing suspicious. But the tension didn't leave, because something still didn't make sense. The commanding officer glanced again at the jacket on the wall. The patches were real. Anyone with military knowledge could see that. This was not a costume or decoration. This was history. Dangerous history. Why didn't dispatch mention your service? The officer muttered. Marcus gave a small smile. They don't usually ask. Outside, more neighbors gathered. Phones were recording. Whispers spread across the street. Inside, another officer walked toward a small shelf near the living room. Framed photos stood there. Marcus in uniform. Marcus with a team. Marcus standing beside helicopters and desert landscapes. One photo made the officer stop. There were no names on it, but the faces beside Marcus were familiar. Too familiar. The officer swallowed hard and quietly called the commanding officer over. Sir, you might want to see this. The commanding officer's expression changed as soon as he looked. He stepped back slowly. Now the panic was real, but hidden. Because Marcus Hill wasn't just a veteran. He had been part of operations that never made the news. Operations people didn't talk about. The officer cleared his throat. Mr. Hill, were you stationed overseas in 2009? Marcus looked at him carefully. That question was not random. Yes. The officer nodded slowly, connecting pieces in his mind. A memory surfaced. A briefing years ago. A mission that went wrong, until a small team fixed it. Lives saved. Names classified. The room felt smaller now. Meanwhile, outside, a police radio suddenly crackled loudly. Unit 12, confirmed status. Federal office requesting update on Marcus Hill. Every officer inside froze. Federal office? The commanding officer grabbed the radio quickly and stepped away to respond quietly. Marcus noticed everything. The looks, the whispers, the sudden respect mixed with fear. He sighed softly. He didn't enjoy this part. He had left that life behind for a reason. When the commanding officer returned, his tone had completely changed. Mr. Hill, it seems there's been a misunderstanding. Marcus looked at his broken door. Wood splintered. Lock destroyed. Cold air entering his home. A misunderstanding that needed 10 officers? He asked calmly. No one answered. The young officer who first noticed the jacket finally spoke. Sir, we didn't know. Marcus nodded slowly. I know, and that was the problem. They didn't know who he was. They didn't know what he had done. They only saw an address and a complaint. But somewhere else, someone clearly did know. Because minutes later, black SUVs turned onto the street. Unmarked. Quiet. The kind that didn't come for small mistakes. The officers outside straightened immediately. Some stepped back without being told. Marcus looked through the window and recognized the vehicles instantly. His expression changed for the first time that night. Not fear. Not anger. Just concern. Because if they were here, then this was no longer about a neighbor's complaint. This meant his past had finally caught up with him. And whatever was coming next, it was bigger than the police at his door. The black SUVs stopped quietly outside Marcus Hill's house. No sirens. No flashing lights. Just silence. The kind of silence that made trained men nervous. Police officers stepped aside without being asked. Some pretended to check their radios. Others avoided looking at the vehicles completely. Everyone understood one thing. This situation was no longer theirs. The doors of the first SUV opened. 2 men stepped out wearing plain suits. No voix visible. No raised voices. But the way they walked made it clear they were in charge now. Inside the house, Marcus watched through the window. He recognized the walk. Federal. He closed his eyes for a second, taking a slow breath. He had hoped this day would never come. The commanding officer opened the door as the agents approached. One of them spoke quietly. We'll take it from here. No arguments followed. The agents stepped inside and looked around the room. Their eyes stopped on Marcus. One of them gave a small nod, almost respectful. Sergeant Hill, the older agent said. It's been a long time. Marcus didn't smile. Not long enough, he replied. The police officers exchanged confused looks. They were no longer part of the conversation, but they couldn't leave either. Something serious was happening, and everyone could feel it. The younger agent pulled out a small folder. We didn't expect contact like this, he said. This was supposed to stay quiet. Marcus crossed his arms slowly. Then why am I being woken up at 4 a.m? The agents glanced at each other, because they didn't have a simple answer. Outside, neighbors continued recording. The scene looked like something from a movie now. Police cars, black SUVs, suited agents, and a quiet man standing in the center of it all. Finally, the older agent spoke. Someone accessed an old file, he said carefully. A classified one. Marcus's eyes hardened slightly. What file? The agent hesitated before answering. Operation Night Harbor. The name hung in the air. Even some of the officers felt the tension rise, though they didn't understand why. Marcus looked down for a moment. Memories he had buried years ago pushed back to the surface. Sand, darkness, gunfire. A mission that was never officially acknowledged. A mission where people were supposed to die, but didn't, because Marcus and his team changed the outcome. That operation ended, Marcus said quietly. A long time ago. The older agent nodded. Yes, officially. That single word changed everything. Officially, which meant unofficially it never ended. The younger agent continued. Someone has been asking questions. Old names. Old locations. Your name came up. Marcus felt a cold weight settle in his chest. He had spent years building a quiet life. Fixing cars. Helping neighbors. Staying invisible. And now someone was digging into the past. Who? Marcus asked. The agents didn't answer immediately. Instead, the older agent looked toward the broken door, then back at Marcus. That's what we're trying to figure out. Outside, more vehicles arrived, not federal this time. News vans. Someone had already called the media. The situation was growing bigger by the minute. One police officer whispered, "This is going to be everywhere by morning." Marcus heard him. He knew that was true, and that worried him more than anything. Because attention was dangerous. Attention brought questions. And questions led back to things that were never meant to be discussed. The older agent lowered his voice. "Sergeant Hill, you may not be safe here anymore." Marcus looked around his home. The pictures. The quiet life he had built piece by piece. He shook his head slowly. "I fought my whole life to come home," he said. "I'm not running again." The agent studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded once. "I was afraid you'd say that." Outside, camera lights flashed as reporters gathered behind police lines. The story was already spreading. Police raid, veteran, federal agents. But none of them knew the truth. Not yet. Because somewhere, someone had reopened a mission that should have stayed buried. And if that person was looking for Marcus Hill, then this early morning visit was only the beginning. Morning lights slowly replaced the flashing red and blue outside Marcus Hill's house. But the tension didn't fade with the darkness. If anything, it grew heavier. News vans lined the street now. Reporters stood behind police tape, speaking into cameras, guessing at stories they didn't understand. Neighbors whispered. Phones kept recording. Inside the house, the federal agents asked the remaining officers to step outside. The room finally became quiet again. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, his untouched coffee now cold. The older agent stood across from him. His name was Harris. Marcus remembered him from years ago, not from the battlefield, but from the briefings afterward. The man who cleaned up stories. The man who made sure missions disappeared. "You should have warned me," Marcus said calmly. Harris sighed. "We thought it was buried." Marcus gave a small, humorless smile. "Nothing stays buried." The younger agent opened a tablet and placed it on the table. A file appeared on the screen. Old photos. Satellite images. Names blacked out. Operation Night Harbor. Marcus stared at it, his jaw tightening. "That mission saved lives," he said quietly. "Yes," Harris replied. "But it also made enemies." Marcus already knew that. Years ago, his team had stopped something that wasn't supposed to be stopped. A weapons transfer hidden inside a humanitarian operation. Powerful people lost money. Powerful people lost control. And powerful people never forgot. The younger agent spoke carefully. 3 weeks ago, someone accessed the archive. Not just viewing it, downloading everything. Marcus looked up. "Who has that kind of access?" Harris hesitated. "That's the problem. Someone who shouldn't." The room went silent again. Outside, camera flashes reflected through the window. Marcus noticed how exposed everything suddenly felt. His quiet life was gone overnight. "Why come to me now?" Marcus asked. Harris leaned forward slightly. "Because 2 names from your old team have already been contacted." Marcus's stomach tightened. "Contacted how?" "No one knows. One disappeared last week. The other requested federal protection yesterday. That changed everything. This wasn't curiosity. This was movement. Someone was rebuilding the past piece by piece. Marcus leaned back in his chair, thinking. His mind worked the way it used to during missions, calm, organized, searching for patterns. Someone wants something from that operation, he said. Harris nodded. We think so. But they don't know where it is, Marcus continued. The younger agent looked confused. Where what is? Marcus didn't answer immediately, because he realized something at that moment. The mission hadn't just ended with arrests and reports. There had been something else. Something recovered. Something so dangerous it never made it into official records. Only a few people knew the truth, and Marcus was one of them. Before he could speak again, his phone vibrated on the table. Unknown number. Everyone looked at it. Marcus slowly picked it up. He didn't say hello. A calm voice spoke first. You should have stayed invisible, Sergeant. The room froze. Marcus's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. Who is this? A short pause. Then the voice replied, almost amused. Someone who remembers Night Harbor very clearly. The call ended. Silence filled the room again. The younger agent immediately started tracing the number, but Marcus already knew it wouldn't work. Whoever made that call wanted to be heard, not found. Harris looked at Marcus seriously now. This just became urgent. Marcus stood up slowly and walked toward the window. Reporters, cameras, curious neighbors, a normal life disappearing in front of him. They're not coming for information, Marcus said quietly. Harris frowned. Then what do they want? Marcus stared outside, his reflection faint in the glass. They think I still have it. The agents exchanged worried looks. Because if Marcus was right, then this wasn't about revenge. It was about something valuable enough to pull ghosts out of hiding. Something worth risking exposure. Marcus turned back toward them. For years, he said, I thought that night was over. He paused. I was wrong. Outside, one of the news reporters suddenly shouted as more vehicles arrived at the end of the street. Not police, not federal, and not friendly. The past had stopped knocking. Now it was walking straight toward his door. The vehicles that stopped at the end of the street didn't look official. No lights, no markings, just dark windows and engines left running. The kind of cars that didn't belong in quiet neighborhoods. Marcus watched from the window, his face calm, but his mind already moving ahead. He had seen this before. Not in America. Not in civilian life. In places where problems arrived without warning. Behind him, Agent Harris spoke into his phone, his voice low and tense. The younger agent moved quickly, closing blinds and asking officers outside to push reporters farther back. But Marcus knew something they didn't. If these people wanted attention, they wouldn't have come quietly, which meant they wanted something else. Control. Do you recognize them? Harris asked. Marcus shook his head slowly. No, but I recognized the method. One of the vehicle's doors opened. A man stepped out. Mid-40s. Calm posture. No rush in his movement. He looked around the street like he already owned it. Marcus felt a cold realization settle in his chest. This wasn't random. This was planned. The man didn't approach the house immediately. Instead, he looked directly toward Marcus's window, as if he knew exactly where to look. The message was clear. We know you're here. Inside, tension rose again. Police radios crackled. Officers outside waited for orders that hadn't come yet. Harris turned back to Marcus. We can move you now. Safe location. Quietly. Marcus didn't answer. His eyes stayed on the man outside. Running would only confirm what they suspected. And Marcus had spent his entire life refusing to run. No, he said finally. If I leave, they follow. The younger agent frowned. Then what's the plan? Marcus took a slow breath. For now, we listen. As if on cue, Marcus's phone vibrated again. Same unknown number. He answered this time. You shouldn't have come here, Marcus said calmly. The same voice replied, smooth and confident. We didn't come for you, Sergeant. Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. Then why are you here? A short pause. We came for what you took. Harris watched Marcus carefully, trying to read his reaction. Marcus stayed silent. The voice continued. You saved lives that night. Very noble. But something disappeared afterward. Something valuable. Marcus finally spoke. You're chasing ghosts. A small laugh came through the phone. No, we're chasing leverage. The call ended again. Marcus lowered the phone slowly. The room felt heavier now, because he understood what they wanted, and why they were willing to come into the open. Years ago, during Operation Night Harbor, Marcus's team had intercepted more than weapons. They had found data, proof connecting powerful people to illegal operations. The kind of proof that could destroy careers, governments, reputations. Officially, that data was destroyed. Unofficially, Marcus had made sure it couldn't be used again. Or so he thought. Harris spoke carefully. Tell me the truth, Marcus. Do you still have it? Marcus didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked toward the wall where the sealed jacket hung. His reflection stared back at him through the glass. That file ruined lives, Marcus said quietly. Good and bad. Harris waited. Marcus turned back. I made sure no one could use it. That's not an answer, Harris said. Marcus met his eyes. It's the only one you're getting. Outside, the man near the vehicles finally started walking toward the house. Slow, confident, unafraid of cameras or police. The officers outside tensed, unsure whether to stop him. Marcus noticed something else. The man wasn't armed. He didn't need to be. This was psychological now. Pressure. Fear. The man stopped just short of the police line and smiled faintly toward the house. Marcus understood the message instantly. This was only step one. They were showing him they could reach him anytime, anywhere. The younger agent whispered, "They're not backing off." Marcus nodded. "No," he said quietly. "They're testing me." For the first time since the night began, Marcus felt the old feeling return. The one he thought he had left behind with the military. The feeling before a mission. Before everything changes. He looked at Harris. If they want the past, Marcus said, then the past is what they're going to get. Harris frowned. What does that mean? Marcus's expression hardened. It means they just made a mistake. Outside, the man turned and walked back toward the vehicles, as if the message had already been delivered. Engine started. Cars slowly pulled away. But everyone inside the house understood one thing now. This wasn't over. It had only begun. And somewhere, someone believed Marcus Hill was still hiding something worth fighting for. The streets slowly returned to normal after the vehicles left. Police cars pulled away. Reporters packed their equipment. Neighbors went back inside, whispering theories about what they had just witnessed. But inside Marcus Hill's house, nothing felt normal anymore. The silence now felt dangerous. Marcus stood in the living room, staring at the empty street through the window. His mind was far away, back in a place he had tried to forget for years. Night Harbor. Agent Harris watched him carefully. He had seen soldiers carry memories like this before. Memories that never truly left. You said they made a mistake, Harris finally said. What did you mean? Marcus didn't turn around. It means they think this is about information, he said quietly. It's not. The younger agent frowned. Then what is it about? Marcus exhaled slowly. Someone survived that night who wasn't supposed to. The room went still. Harris's expression changed. You're saying this is personal? Marcus nodded once. During Operation Night Harbor, their team had intercepted a covert transfer. Weapons, money, and data tied to powerful networks. The mission had turned violent fast. Explosions. Chaos. People running in the dark. Official reports said the threat was neutralized. But Marcus remembered something different. One man escaping into the smoke. One man Marcus couldn't reach in time. I thought he was gone, Marcus said. We all did. The younger agent looked down at the tablet, scrolling through files quickly. There's no record of anyone escaping. Marcus gave a small, tired smile. There wouldn't be. Harris understood immediately. Some failures never made it into reports. Who was he? Harris asked. Marcus hesitated, because saying the name made it real again. Daniel Cross. The name hit harder than expected. Harris leaned back slowly. Cross was intelligence support. He was on your side. Yes, Marcus said quietly. Until he wasn't. Years ago, Cross had been part of the operation, the man handling communications and intel. Smart, calm, trusted, too trusted. When the truth about the illegal operation surfaced, Cross had realized how valuable the data really was. Not as evidence, as power. He tried to take the drive, Marcus said. Try to disappear with it. The younger agent looked shocked. Why wasn't this reported? Marcus finally turned around. Because the mission succeeded, he said. And command didn't want questions. Harris rubbed his forehead slowly. Now the pieces were starting to fit. Someone accessing old files. Old teammates being contacted. A man returning after years in the shadows. If Cross is alive, Harris said, why come back now? Marcus's answer came immediately. Because he thinks I still have what he lost. The room felt colder. Outside, the sun was fully up now, but Marcus felt like the night hadn't ended. The younger agent's tablet suddenly beeped. He looked down, confused. Sir, you need to see this. He turned the screen toward them. A news report had already gone live online. Federal activity at veterans' home linked to classified military operation. Someone had leaked information. Not details, just enough to create attention. Marcus's jaw tightened. That's not Cross's style, he said. He works quietly. Harris nodded. Then someone else is helping him. Which meant this was bigger than one man. Marcus walked back toward the wall where his SEAL jacket hung. His reflection stared back at him again. Older now, tired, but still the same man underneath. I left that life behind, he said softly. But it didn't leave me. Harris stepped closer. What are you going to do? Marcus's answer came without hesitation. I finish it. The younger agent looked uneasy. This isn't a mission anymore. This is your life. Marcus shook his head slightly. It was always both. His phone vibrated again. This time, it wasn't an unknown number. It was a message. A single photo. Marcus's breath stopped for a moment. The picture showed an old teammate. Alive. Tied to a chair. And beneath the image, one sentence. Bring the drive, or he disappears next. Harris looked at Marcus, alarmed. You said the drive was gone. Marcus's expression hardened, darker than before. I said no one could use it, he replied. Outside, clouds slowly covered the morning sun. The past wasn't just chasing Marcus anymore. It was forcing him back into the fight. And this time, it wasn't about secrets or missions. It was about saving one of his own. The photo stayed on Marcus Hill's phone screen. His old teammate sat tied to a chair, bruised but alive. The message underneath was clear. This was no longer about threats or pressure. This was war, just without uniforms. Agent Harris looked at Marcus carefully. If Cross has him, we need to move fast. Federal teams can. Marcus shook his head. No. Harris frowned. No. Marcus placed the phone down slowly. His voice stayed calm, but something inside him had changed. Cross doesn't want to fight, Marcus said. He wants me. Years ago, Marcus had learned something important. Some battles weren't about winning. They were about control. And Daniel Cross wanted control more than anything. The younger agent spoke nervously. You can't go alone. Marcus looked at him, not angry, just certain. I won't be alone. He walked toward the wall and carefully took down the SEAL jacket. The fabric looked old, but the meaning behind it hadn't faded. He didn't put it on. He simply folded it over his arm. That life taught me something, Marcus said quietly. You don't leave people behind. Harris understood then. This wasn't about orders anymore. This was personal. Hours later, Marcus stood in an abandoned industrial yard on the edge of the city. The location Cross had sent. Empty buildings. Broken windows. The kind of place no one visited unless they had a reason. Marcus arrived alone. At least, that's what it looked like. A voice echoed from the shadows. You always were predictable, Sergeant. Daniel Cross stepped forward. Older now. Thinner. But his eyes were the same. Sharp, calculating, always searching for advantage. Marcus studied him silently. You should have stayed gone, Marcus said. Cross smiled faintly. And let all that power disappear? You know what was on that drive? Governments, corporations, people who would pay anything to make it vanish. Marcus didn't respond. Because Cross wasn't wrong. The data from Night Harbor could destroy lives. But it could also destroy innocent people caught in the middle. That's why you kept it, Cross continued. Not for money. For control. Marcus shook his head slowly. No, I kept it so nobody could use it. Cross laughed softly. You always thought you were the hero. Behind Cross, Marcus saw his teammate tied to a chair, alive but weak. Let him go, Marcus said. Cross tilted his head. Bring the drive first. Marcus reached into his jacket slowly. Cross's posture tightened, ready for anything. Marcus pulled out a small metal object. A storage drive. Cross's eyes lit up instantly. You actually kept it, he said. Marcus held it up. For years, I thought destroying it would fix everything, Marcus said calmly. But the truth is, some things don't disappear. People like you keep chasing them. Cross stepped closer, unable to hide his excitement now. Give it to me. Marcus looked at him one last time. You still don't understand. And then Marcus dropped the drive onto the ground. Before Cross could react, Marcus stepped back. A sharp crack echoed through the yard. The drive shattered under Marcus's boot. Cross froze. No. Marcus's voice cut through the silence. It was never about the data. In that moment, federal vehicles surrounded the area. Agents moved in quickly, weapons raised. Harris stepped out from behind one of the vehicles. Cross looked around, realizing too late. Marcus had never come alone. You used me, Cross said bitterly. Marcus shook his head. No, you used yourself. Agents secured Cross while others freed Marcus's teammate. The fight ended not with gunfire, but with silence. Later that night, Marcus stood outside his repaired home. The street was quiet again. Normal. Harris approached him one last time. It's over, he said. Marcus nodded slowly. For real this time. The news would move on. Another story. Another headline forgotten in days. But the neighbors would remember something different. They would remember the man who stayed calm when chaos came to his door. The man who didn't run from his past, but didn't let it control him either. Marcus looked up at the early morning sky. For the first time in years, his shoulders relaxed. He wasn't Sergeant Hill anymore. Just Marcus. A man who served his country and finally came home. And sometimes, the strongest thing a person can do is not fight anymore, but choose peace after the battle ends.